concerned with that issue. And I found that ultimately it comes down to funding. It's a very expensive process to remove these boats, and I don't want to go into detail, but those are the main constraints as far as removing them. However, the Harbor Patrol, working with THEC and the police department, are actually removing the most abandoned vessels in the state right now. So the current process that they have to deal with the issue, it has actually proven to be effective. It's just financially there are some barriers. But I don't want to elaborate anymore on that. What I would like to do is thank John Mitchell with the city, who has, if you would stand, who has been. Hey, John. I'd also like to thank Mindy Stern. Any other mentors, if you're here tonight, please stand also too and be recognized. I'm not familiar with what Chief Reynolds is here. He's been excellent to work with. Thank you. That's all.
Sydney Clinton also, by the way, folks, organized the March for Life event that took place for the last 2 years, promoting gun safety in our community. That was a result of the terrible tragedy down in Lakeland, Florida, a couple of years ago. She's been a remarkable leader in that regard, and she wants to go to Harvard University. This is a real smart young lady, but she's a real future leader of our community. Sydney?
I'm not really sure what exactly they wanted me to talk about, but Mayor Tecklenburg is too kind. I've worked with him a lot over the last year and a half, and I'm fortunate to work with him again during this program. I've worked a lot with Jerry over the last year and a half as well, trying to get this program started, so we are wrapping up the end of our course. We've got a week and a half left, and so I'm really excited about just all of the feedback that we've gotten so far, and to be able to work actually inside the city and really see what goes on in the background has been great exposure, I know, for myself and I'm sure for everyone else here. So thank you again, all city council members. I appreciate it. Mayor Tecklenburg, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all. Appreciate y'all being with us tonight. All right, so next we have some public hearings that are before us this evening. I think we have about 7 of those, and the first one is regarding a rezoning, but Mr. Christopher Morgan will be making the presentation on these items, and then anyone in the public can come forward and address any of these issues. I'd ask you to keep your remarks relevant to the matter at hand, and also to limit your remarks to 2 minutes. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Before you is item, first off, E1, rezoning request at 245 Union Street. It's a half acre. It currently has a small warehouse on the property. The request is to add it to the accommodations overlay zone. This was something that our planning commission did recommend for, although our staff did not. Our staff opinion was that it's in the Upper Peninsula zoning district and has a lot of varied uses in that category, and did not need to have the additional accommodations potential. But again, the planning commission did recommend for it. Just some images of the property. Here we have UG Street running east and west. This is Meeting Street here. Meeting Street Lofts has just been developed across the street. There's a future hotel and parking and office project across the street from the subject parcel. Here we have the subject parcel again. This is the warehouse building that's on the site. And an image from the accommodations overlay that shows where the site would be here. And these other parcels are in the accommodations overlay. However, this large one was not developed for an accommodations use, even though it did have the accommodations overlay. And this is just an image from the visitor accommodation study. So again, the request is to go to accommodations overlay at 245 Legion.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Please come forward, state your name and address. And if anybody else is interested, please go ahead and cue up to the mic. Yes,
Good
ma'am.
evening, Leah Farrell with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC is opposed to this application, and we were also in agreement with city staff who recommended denial at Planning Commission. This piecemeal, non-contiguous expansion of the accommodations overlay is why we're seeing this proliferation of hotels. And the area is already overly concentrated with accommodations uses. As the Hotel Task Force agreed, a livable city requires a healthy mix of diversity of uses. So we're looking for housing, retail, office, not another hotel on this site. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, the matter comes before council.
One more.
Oh, one more. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Ben Chase. I'm from Charleston, and I'm the applicant and the property owner. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Yes,
I
sir.
know that flooding, hotels, many other issues are fairly contentious these days. I'm going to try to just make it brief and factual for everybody. Just to clarify, the disapproval from the city staff and the subsequent approval from the planning commission, the city staff said the timing was not right. But the planning commission disagreed because even though there may be changes to the hotel ordinances, my request does not conflict with either the past, the present, or the newest proposed hotel ordinances that allow hotel use. I'm in the Upper Peninsula District, which allows the accommodations use with this layout. Here it is. I have Upper Peninsula zoning now. But let's back up a bit. The city has seen fit to rezone my property, not once, not twice, but 3 times as the city has expanded northward. I enjoyed light industrial zoning as a warehouse that I built in 1987. Then the city stripped me of that designation and made me half light industrial and half general business. Then again, more recently, they zoned my property general business. And now the most recent change dubbed me Upper Peninsula when that new designation came about. Since I have had something of a moving target of zoning of sorts, I formally and respectfully ask this council to help settle it tonight, here and now, and square everything up. The new hotel ordinance that has been deferred, I have no issue complying with it, when and if it passes. Some of the provisions, the newest form, prohibit displacement of certain uses. I am not displacing any housing. The bridge did that. No single-family residents live between Hugie Street, between King Street and Morrison Drive on Hugie Street. Hugie Street has always been a shortcut across the city for those who knew about it. It stretches all the way from Haygood at Citadel to Morrison near the river. It is and will become one of the major thoroughfares in this growing area. As evidenced by the recently approved, from 2015, the recently approved $3 million for the Hugie Street Makeover Project, and supported by the mayor's own words tonight with the King and Hugie stormwater money spent. To quote the,
Please wrap up.
sure, thank you. This is pretty important for me, so I've just got a little bit more to say. Thank you. I'm not displacing any retail or office either. I hope to provide a project that will enhance the recent developments and improve the ones already approved in the immediate area, and take advantage of the city's wishes for this area. I'm also amenable to the other factors such as providing monies for the Affordable Housing Fund. The accommodations overlay layer has been granted right across the street from me, and that project will be built. The city as recently as May of this year granted the same designation, a rock's throw south of my property on Meeting, and just again north where Meeting and Morrison intersect. The city obviously believes this area is both right and deserving of this accommodation zone. The property catty corner from my property was given this designation as well, but they turned into apartments. There will be a nice blend of office, 2 and 3 doors down, multifamily and retail catty corner, a church down the street and behind me, and city affordable housing on the other corner. If that is not a blending of community, I don't know what is. As far as the too many hotels syndrome, it simply is not true.
Thank you, sir. Please wrap up.
one property chose to do multifamily instead. I do respect staff's opinion, but planning commission, and I just didn't agree with it. I realize the city is changing very rapidly, and that we have to manage growth. That's what this request does. It takes hotel guests out of the downtown and brings them uptown. I have a copy of the hotel study which shows that hotels generate 6 times less traffic.
Thank you, sir. I'm
Enough.
going to have to ask you to finish up, and you'll be available, I'm sure, if any questions from
Just the
my
last
council.
paragraph, Mr. Mayor, and I'll take questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter?
If I could just finish the last paragraph, then I'll take some
Seeing
questions.
that- No, sir, I'm going to ask this matter to come to council. I'm sure if they have a question, they'd be happy to ask you. The matter now comes to council. Yes, sir.
Before the motion is made, I spoke to Mr. Chase, and the problem that I had when I first heard about it, which was Wednesday, I wasn't aware of this. I told Mr. Chase the same thing, I wasn't aware of it. Because if I was aware of this before, I would have to go to both of the churches that is there, which is Gritty Refuge Church and Eastside Baptist Church, which is a district I represent in that area, just to inform them what might be taking place. And, you know, we have a lot of traffic on Hugie Street, and I know it very well because I was living around in the area for 35 years. And the thing is that we also have another hotel coming around the corner of the meeting in Hugie Street, which is still in the making. And I looked at what he's planning on doing with that property if it's rezoned as another hotel. And my problem is I want everyone to be on the same page. And when I saw that this planning commission approved it, staff disapprove it, so I was wondering, what's the limit between the two? Most of the time they're on the same page. This time they're not. So I had a little problem with that, why this one is doing it that someone else is not. So when I spoke to Mr. Chase, he told him the same thing.
Yes, sir.
And that was my only dilemma in this particular project, is making sure that the people there, that's there, understand what's going to be taking place in that particular area. And I want to know how these cars are going to be coming out of there when you have two churches there, and you're going to have another hotel coming, and the other hotel is going to be larger, I guess. And this hotel is there, they'll be coming out in the same exit, if you may, which is exiting to Hugie Street. Hotel that's planned, if he builds a hotel that's planned, is backed up to Eastside Baptist Church, correct? Your property backs up to
Yes, sir.
Eastside Baptist Church. So I wanted them to be aware of what's taking place, that might be taking place before this go further. So that was my dilemma on this all the time, and I mentioned that, and I tell them the same thing I'm saying here. I told Mr. Chase the same thing. I don't make changes, they know I don't play games, that's the way I am. I'm gonna tell you up front how I feel about something. And I tell them I'm looking at the big vision, the whole vision of that particular area, of two hotels coming side by side, doing the same entrance into Hugie Street. And so I still have my little problems with that, but the planning commission already approved it. So the rezoning, because most of the properties there have been rezoned to the accommodation overlay. So I was going to tell my colleagues, you vote your own conviction on this one.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Shealy.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't hear that last thing that Councilman Mitchell said.
He asked you to vote your own conviction.
Oh.
Councilmember Shealy and then Lewis.
We need to make a motion before we do discussion.
I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion.
I make a motion, we approve this.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? There's a second. Yes, sir. Councilmember Shealy.
You know, I looked at this a lot on Google Earth and looked at the surrounding properties. I didn't see an issue with, especially with a hotel going across the street. With that, I really believe what Mr. Chase is saying, that he's not taking away from any affordable housing. He's not taking away from some of these other things that we're usually concerned with. And this may be a little bit different in this situation. The Chase family's been here, you know, for a long, long time, not only as residents of our city, but as business owners. And they've run good businesses, and they've always been reputable. And that family, you you know, it's not somebody from the outside. They're a family that cares about this city and is going to do things right, want to do things the right way because they're going to be here a long time.
Anyone else like to be heard? Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. The planning commission approved this. And normally, city council in certain cases don't override the planning commission. In some cases, we can't because it takes 10 votes. It seemed like in this particular case, it's just going to be the simple majority. But I don't think I'm going to vote to overrule the planning commission.
Anyone else like to be heard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Councilman Mitchell was concerned about the churches being at least informed about this. He shared that with many of us. Briefly, Mr. Chase, did you speak to any of the churches that would be your neighbors about what your plans are?
Thank you. I've enjoyed a good relationship with both of these churches for over 30 years. I spoke to Pastor Jackson. He wasn't the original pastor of this church. The churches have been parking on my property for 30 years when they have overflow parking at no charge. We've gotten along terrifically. And the only time I spoke to the Greater Refuge recently with Pastor Jackson a couple of days ago, I remarked to him, I said, Mr. Jackson, I know that things are changing very rapidly in that area. You know, frankly, they haven't had to use my parking lot for the last number of years because their membership has been declining. But he said, when I remarked, I said, well, I'd like to be a good neighbor with the church if you'd like to be a good neighbor with me. And he said, we're good neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shea.
Yeah, if I could ask Mr. Morgan if he can clarify again what was the staff's concerns with this property.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
What was the staff recommended disapproval? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes.
Clarify that for us, please.
Because the city had given zoning, Upper Peninsula zoning on this property. The feeling was that there are a lot of additional uses, a lot of potential additional density through that gives a lot of opportunities on the site. And we do try to be very judicious when we recommend for any expansions of the accommodations overlay, and that coupled with the fact that the Upper Peninsula zoning is there, we felt there were many uses that could happen on the property.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Shea. That was going to be my question too. I did attend the Planning Commission meeting, and I think it was well discussed by that body that tries to be thoughtful globally, according to our master planning, and also where their work is being asked to be located. I guess my thought about this, and I spoke with Mr. Chase too, I appreciate the call and the opportunity to hear from you and ask my questions. But my thought, all during the Planning Commission, which is the same tonight that you just voiced, reminded us of, Mr. Morgan, that I consider the Upper Peninsula zoning like the highest and best opportunity we can give to a landowner. And it also reflects the stability of use that we would like in terms of people wanting to be in a neighborhood so that we have that continuity of population instead of having the transient of hotels. When I drive through Hughie, which is not very often, but when I do, I think about the people that must have lived there for generations, sort of seeing their neighborhood change, but yet having those anchors of familiar community and the roots that go with them. And I just feel like a hotel, yes, I know they overcrowd the downtown area, but we're sort of used to that. And that really was what we created intentionally, is to have populations that are going to come and go on a weekly basis in our market, in our streets. We've all learned how to drive carefully because the tourists are there. I just don't see that as a way of continuing development in places that we want to have long-term stable use that enjoys a new urban flavor for our city. Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard? Councilmember Mitchell.
This is a point of view. I think this will be one of the first hotels that's going to be placed in an area as such. most of the hotels in the thoroughfare of Union Street, King Street, but in the community, in this particular area, like Union Street, this is going to be the first one that I know of. And I'm just kind of shaky with that to see this coming that way. And I still got my problems with it. And like I told Mr. Chase, it's nothing personal toward him at all, because I've known your parents ran that store on King Street for years and years. I remember that. But this is the first coming into that community that way, in that particular street, off of a thoroughfare, of a main thoroughfare. And I also told him, I said, if it was housing, I wouldn't have had any problems. Because you know how I'm with housing. I would have been no problem at all. But with the hotel, I just have my problem, a mixed emotion with that. And like I told my colleagues, just vote your own conviction, because I don't think I can really vote for that right now.
Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No one knows more so than the owner, but this property has had a pretty long and storied history in front of this council. I'm pretty sure at one point, not in the too distant future, one of the things that was considered here was a gun range, right? We thought about putting a gun range in there. Then, when we got through Upper Peninsula zoning is an opt-in zoning, so I'm pretty sure, that's sort of the gold standard of zoning, and we spent a lot of time looking at this, and owners opted in. So, it's a good zoning. We've just gone through an enormous amount of time in this city, on this council, looking at, thinking about accommodations. It has been a wrestling match of some epic proportions, and to start expanding the accommodations overlay zone now, in the wake of all the work that we did, I didn't see this come up during that time. I don't think the timing is right on this. I don't think ultimately this is the best place, considering the infrastructure we've got. You're 100 yards away from one of the worst flooding intersections in the city. Just to keep adding in that corridor that 15 years ago there was no Taco Boy, there was no East Street Law, there was none of that stuff, and we've gone from nothing to a whole bunch with private development, and we haven't caught up with infrastructure. And maybe you've gotten caught in that a little bit, but you've got the Upper Peninsula zoning. It's good zoning. I think enough is enough. I'm going to vote against this, and it has nothing to do with this property in particular, but it's the whole notion of we have to at some point say zoning is forever. We keep rezoning the same properties. We're going to lose complete control of our zoning whole process and what we're thinking about for the future. So this one is just one step in the zoning process for me too far, and I'm going to vote no on this one.
Councilmember Griffin and then Shade.
Mr. Chase, I want to apologize to you tonight because I think you're a fair and honest man. I liked your truthfulness. And basically what you've heard tonight is because you weren't greedy quick enough, you're probably not going to get a hotel tonight. I personally don't think that tonight is the night to award you a hotel either, but for a different reason. I think eventually this would be a perfect property for a hotel because we are finishing an overpass over in that area. We're building a new port. We're going to have a lot of traffic coming through that area, new traffic. But basically, you came to the table a little bit late is what I'm hearing from some people here tonight, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think that we should punish you because other people came and got to the table and got their hotels before you. I want to see how this area changes a little bit over the next, I'd say probably over the next year. I mean, I really, really appreciate you coming and talking with me. I wish we could have talked some more. I think that if you don't get this approval tonight and you have an opportunity to go back and meet with the people in the community, meet with Councilmember Mitchell, meet with some of the rest of us, we could help you eventually find a good use for this site. And maybe it is a hotel. But being that, we really just started talking about this late last night, early today, I don't think today is the final end-all day that you get that. But I'm very interested in this area of town because it is changing drastically. But in the same respect, I've got to listen to Councilmember Mitchell, who represents this district, and to grant a hotel or put somebody in the accommodations overlay district would be a huge change to this area. A big, big change, and something that the neighborhood may not be ready for at this time. So I look forward to talking with you. I want to follow up with you. I want to hear more about your ideas. I appreciate you being so honest with us. It's refreshing. And I appreciate you being somebody local who wants to build, you know, because so often we have people that come from all over the world, they build, they make their money, and they leave, and we never see them again. And 9 times out of 10, we don't think twice about those people. We let them do whatever they want, and then they go away. Here you are, a local businessman who is trying to do something, but the timing is a little bit rough because of we haven't gotten our final report back on what's going on with these hotels, and I really think you need to meet with Councilmember Mitchell one-on-one and work with that neighborhood more and get some better ideas through that. But I appreciate your honesty, so thank you.
Councilmember Shady.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask Mr. Morgan to come back one more time? Sorry to come back and forth.
Yes, sir.
Two quick questions. If the request is granted, what type of hotel could be erected there? And as Mr. Chase stated, will this fall into what's been proposed and discussed with the new amendment to the overlay accommodations ordinance?
Yes, since the new, the accommodations ordinance has had a first read from council, should that move forward, it would have to follow that new accommodations overlay and get the special exception under the new standards. As far as what type of hotel could go here, it's a fairly small site, doesn't have a lot of height. I believe the height's 4 stories, maybe 5. I don't have that with me at the moment, but I don't think it would be a super large hotel. Obviously, we'd have to have parking and things like that on site, and that would further limit how much you could build on the site.
All right. Any other comments? We'll call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so why don't we do this?
I need to get that.
Yes.
Madam Clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Councilmember White? Nay. Councilmember Shealy?
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis? Councilmember Mitchell? Councilmember Wagner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory?
Aye.
Councilmember Waring?
Aye.
Councilmember Seeking?
Nay.
Councilmember Shea?
Nay.
Councilmember Griffin?
Nay.
Councilmember Moody?
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson?
Nay.
Mayor?
And there it went.
Yes. The nays.
The nays have it this evening.
What was the count, Mayor?
Okay. 7.
7-6.
7 days with your vote.
Yes, sir.
7.
Thank you very much.
Next, number 2, Mr. Morgan.
Before we go on, I would ask Mr. Shea to get with me and also get with Eastside Baptist Church and Pastor Jackson, Bishop Jackson there, and we'll try to work something out. Might be back for the hotel, you don't know, but because I go in there every back. And get with them and let me see exactly what they feel about that particular area coming in here with the hotel. And that's what I was trying to tell you before, but I wanted to defer it and you told me no. So this is why I'm saying you can go
Thank
back
you very
and
much,
try.
sir. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, sir. So item E2 is a request at 49 Archdale. Got the map in front of us here. These are 2 small parcels, 0.175 of an acre at the corner of Archdale and Market and Vane, across from the Memminger Elementary School. This is the image here of the parcels. There's a small retail shopping center across the street with a restaurant and some other retail. There is elderly housing and a high-rise conglomeration of buildings across the street to the south, and then the Memminger Elementary School and Memminger Auditorium here. Here's some images. There is a historic structure on the site that would, of course, be incorporated into any new uses on the site. All new construction here would be subject to DAR approval, of course, The request is to go from limited business to the urban commercial classification, which does allow greater densities, but this is a district that's created for this area of town, Upper King Street zones, and this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and staff and planning commission recommend approval of the request.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm Paul Garbarini. I live in that conglomeration of elderly housing across the street. It's the Canterbury House. I have three numbers for you: 258, 84, and 17. There are 258 residents at the Canterbury House. We are not allowed to have street parking permits. We have 84 parking places which can be rented by tenants for 258 people. There are 17 parking places, public parking meters on that property. I can't tell you how important that is for people who have handicap stickers, because there's no place else for us to park. That's as close as we can get to the front door of the building. I urge you to consider that. Oh, I don't know, is this city tight on parking? Is there enough? Whatever this zoning requires, I urge you to keep at least those 17 if you cannot increase it. Oh, please.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Will Morrison. I'm the applicant for the rezoning application for 49 Archdale Street. I just want to clarify a few items there. The property itself does not have any public parking on it. It was a parcel that was purchased from the city, and all the spaces on it, excuse me, can you guys hear me now? Sorry about that. All the spaces that are the city spaces along the bottom edge there along Market Street will remain. We're not planning on removing any of them. And then also for this designation, we will be allowed to have a higher density residential development there, which is the goal, and we will accommodate all parking for that development on site. Thank you.
Anyone else like to be heard? Seeing none, matter for council.
I'd like to move to defer this, Mr. Mayor, and be heard if I could get a second. Second.
We have a motion to defer and a second.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Morrison, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming all the way out here to West Ashley to talk about a property that's next door to the Canterbury House. Have you gone and talked to the people at the Canterbury House about this project?
Yeah, well, we've reached out to the Charleston community, but we have not specifically reached out to them.
Okay, and I haven't heard from you all, so I'd love to talk to you about what your plans are for this. I'd like to make sure I get to the Canterbury House. Those are 258 citizens who live here. They're 258 voters. We want to make sure they're here. There are 258 people who want to park, and across the village all around. I haven't heard from the homeowners association. So I have no idea what you plan for that. I am not for or against it. I just want to hear what you have to say. I understand you're consistent with the comprehensive plan, all that stuff. It just would be great if I could lead and let them know what's cooking. So if we can wait a couple of weeks, I would ask my fellow council members for the deferral. You and I will get together as soon as possible, and we'll see where this is all going, report it back out. Does that suit you okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor to defer, please say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Morgan.
Okay. Item E3 is at 200 Spring Street. This is a request to rezone from general business to the MU2 Workforce Housing District. There are other parcels on either side that have been zoned with the MU2 Workforce Housing District. This parcel had a gas station on it, which has been demolished. It's on the north side of Spring Street, or the Septima Park Crosstown Expressway area. The images here show the property with the demolished gas station on it. There will be new housing built in a building here and also in the building here. And there's another parcel just down the street from it that is up for similar zoning tonight as well. We've got another image here just a little bit closer into it as well. And both staff and planning commission recommend approval for the MU2 workforce housing on this site.
Could we go ahead and take 3 and 4 together? Is that okay? They're related, I think.
Okay.
Where are the other properties?
And then the other property is just down the street. It is home to a check cashing business at present. Again, it's general business also, and the request is for MU2 workforce housing. And sorry, our little squares are getting kind of morphed off here, but this is the property in question, and then the other parcel is right here, and the other parcels in between have now been zoned to the MU2 workforce housing, with the exception of one parcel the city is using as a lay-down yard for the crosstown drainage construction. On both of these cases, the Planning Commission and staff recommended approval.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on these two matters? Please come to the microphone if you'd like to be heard. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jeff Romswick at 29 Ashton Street. So
Speak right in the mic, please.
I'm 29 Ashton Street, Jeff Romswick. I think a month or two ago, some of this was brought up, about 200. Our full community on Ashton Street supported it 100%. We like the idea of the gas station being gone and everything else. On the new proposal, where the check cashing and everything else is, we asked, and I don't know if anybody else from our street or community can make it. I tried to talk to as many people as we could. Please don't take away our residential area. Our Ashton Street is under development change. It's going in the right direction. When we start talking about rezoning residential area to accommodate what's new, going to be upcoming on the property of the check cashing, it's very hard to say. I moved into this area 4 years ago, and how I looked at before is property next door to me could be residential. In a matter of minutes, it could go change the zoning to commercial, and then it could be turned into a parking lot or something like that. So we support 100% what happens on Spring Street and everything else. We just ask, please do not take our residential area away from us. Let's make that housing and make it a community.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawrence.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Arthur Lawrence. I live at 210 Fishburne Street, West Side Neighborhood President Emeritus. I'm so happy. I don't know what to do. I may go back to church at night. Because this particular piece of property was an eyesore and was a problem for this community for years. If you know where this piece of property is located and what was there before, title loan, lending money, 300% interest, tax, bleeding this community for years. Every time I go past this property, I have nightmares because what this piece of property has did to this community. And the developer took pride in what's happening on Ashton Street and the surrounding area, what he's working on. He has a wonderful track record for this neighborhood. No one else have a track record what he have for this neighborhood. And if you know me, I don't go along just to get along. We need this. We hope that you approve this. This will have some kind of consistency of what's happening on Spring Street, on both sides of the street, and with this medical complex. So please, whatever you do, let's get rid of that particular property and make it the right thing for the right community and the right fit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to be heard on these two matters? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. My name is Patrick Head. I'm speaking on behalf of the development team. Just wanted to clarify a few things on the two projects. They are separate. The city-owned lot between separates them. The existing MU site at 210 Spring Street, which was the old Pizza Hut, that site is together with 200, which is the gas station, and we're just looking to sync up that zoning, so they're both MU instead of the split zoning. On the other site, I think some of the confusion is that some of the parcels on Ashton are also owned together with these parcels, but we are not looking to rezone the Ashton Street parcels. Similar to what we did behind 210, we've renovated and redone two houses that are part of the community. We're not looking to add MU to Ashland Street, just to the Spring Street parcels. As you can see in that diagram, there's a little piece of a vacant lot in the back that would just square up 216 with 214, just to allow an orthogonal lot for easier building. So, if there's any other questions.
So the only part that's going to MU2.
That little,
is
exactly.
that little part there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the rest of it's all GB. That lot is a flag lot that you can see goes out to the street.
Yes, sir.
And then there's another lot about 3 to the right that are all part of the grouping, but they're not part of that MU parcel.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard? Hearing, seeing none. We have a motion to approve
I'll
and a
second.
second.
I think it's Councilman Mitchell and then
Mitchell
I think.
and Seekings. Any comments, Councilmember Mitchell?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to see that is happening in that area because right where 200 Spring Street was, we lived there. I lived there with my parents then back in the 50s, and it was housing all around Spring Street. When you get further up, you had St. James Hotel and all this stuff back during that time. But right now they're replacing back that which was there back in the 50s and before. So I'm happy to see that they're putting housing back in those areas and giving that corridor back like it was before, and that would help out a lot in that particular area.
Councilmember Lewis.
Yes, sir, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project is in my district. The developers have been before the neighborhood association, has gotten approval from them. It has been before city council. It was voted upon. It was asked to go back to the planning commission to make some changes. They went back, they met with the planning commission, they met with the neighborhood organization. So certainly, I support this project and ask the city council to approve it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Shade.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Morgan, the property adjoining this applicant's property, we just came up and rezoned at the last council meeting, is that correct?
Yes, well, there was a request for the accommodations overlay.
Right, okay.
On those, yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. That's for items number 3 and 4. Mr. Morgan, number 5.
Okay, number 5 is 404 Woodland Shores Road. I believe our slide projector is not advancing now for some reason, but I can just give you the background on it. You have the maps in front of you. Again, this is a recently annexed parcel. It's an individual single-family house. It was annexed in the city June 18th of this year, and the request is for SR1, which matches the surrounding area of the city.
Would anybody like to be heard on this matter? Comes before council.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 6.
Okay, and this is also on James Island. It's a quarter-acre site. Here we go. It may be my controller here. Here we go. Here we go. All right, that was the Woodland Shores. Okay, and here we have the WAPU, 2154 WAPU, which is also recommended for SR1 zoning. Both planning commission and staff recommend approval, and that matches the zoning in the surrounding area.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And finally, number 7.
Number 7, this is an item that's been before the Traffic and Transportation Committee, and I believe Mr. Benjamin may have a couple of comments. This is a change to the zoning ordinance to require through the TRC process provisions for transit accommodations when new development occurs in the city. And I'll let Mr. Benjamin give a couple of comments.
Good evening, council members. I will be really, really brief. Just want to thank you first for your unanimous approval of this for its first reading, both with TNT and the council. And then also our planning commission approved this as well. Councilmember Mitchell said something that was interesting just earlier regarding the hotel you all were reviewing, regarding the traffic patterns and how that affects the public right-of-way. The goal of this ordinance puts a tool in the toolbox of TRC to address those concerns directly based on existing measurements that we have in our TRC process. As you might already know, the two main things that are measured within the traffic studies that these major projects do is one, level of service of the public right-of-way, and then trip generation. What we've asked for in this ordinance is to use those existing measurements that are already taken for these development projects that would come before TRC and say, if you're going to be addressing transportation, you need to address it in its totality, and that includes transit. And so we're excited about this. Really grateful to Carter and the Council of Governments that really helped us shepherd this through. Remember, we have 860 or so bus stops in the Tri-County area. Less than 20% have a shelter. In the city, we have 378. Not even 40 of them have shelter. Thankfully, because of the work of Carter, Councilmember Seekings, Senator Kimpson, and others, we already have 10 brand new shelters that have been installed in the city in the last 6 months. And so we're just really excited about this movement to make sure that we're creating, addressing our congestion concerns, addressing our safety concerns, and making sure that there's choice of mode. And this piece gives an extra key to the TRC process to address that.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Move for approval.
Second. Done. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification. Have a motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So I must admit I was remiss when we started our meeting to recognize Reverend Paul Rienzo of Crosstown Church, who is they are our host tonight, and we just want to thank them for their hospitality, both last night and tonight. Reverend Rienzo is in the back of the church. Would y'all please recognize him? And thank you. And if you were here for last night at the beginning of our Dutch Dialogues meeting, Reverend Rienzo, Paul, opened us up. And he didn't preach, but he could have been preaching about water and drainage. And he's a very passionate advocate for improvements in our city for drainage. And we thank him for his support and his passion on this topic. So next we have just one city council minutes to approve, May 28th. We have a motion, any additions, deletions, corrections? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. And next is our citizens' participation period. I don't know how many folks we have sign up, but we take a 30-minute period, and I guess Jennifer's going to go get that right now. So while she's doing that, I'm going to go ahead to section I, the fast track cities. And just, it's more of an announcement than an approval needed, but I just want to make council aware that the city of Charleston, our way the mayor, has agreed to be part of the Paris Declaration. It doesn't have anything to do with climate change. It's ending the AIDS epidemic and setting a goal to achieve what they call the 90-90-90 targets by the year 2030. And the trajectory is to get zero HIV/AIDS spread in the city of Charleston. And we're working with all the healthcare providers in our community. We have a signing of this commitment, and it's going to be a remarkable effort over the next 11, 12 years or so to address the HIV/AIDS epidemic in our city. So we have about 36 people here, and can we have a 5-minute break? I've got a request for a 5-minute break. It's 5 minutes to 7 by my watch.
Keep my
Can
kids
we
right there.
reconvene at 7 o'clock?
Just leave this running.
Just 5 minutes. Don't make it 15 now. 5 minutes. All right.
Might give me a little bit more time, and hopefully I'll be able to. I gotta go to the bathroom. Do you have to go? Do you need some? I already went.
It wants to be
I'm gonna go real quick.
Can we go to the bathroom? Parker, do you need to go?
All right, Mary, you want to keep this roll in the open closet? Well, if I call it, it stops it. I think we can put it back. Yeah, I'll just tell him to cut it out. Bathroom.
We can do that following Monday.
I went ahead and signed up.
Yeah.
It's a week from tomorrow. It's so weird. I would love to be able to get Monday to get it done. We have
Mike, you see this one? Send me an email. See it.
Now, you ain't love this. I don't know if you want my mom.
See what you guys do, all right?
All right. Very good. Yeah, we will see.
All right.
Yeah, you're right.
What's up?
Testing, here we go. All right, if I could call council members back up to the table along with Madam Clerk. All right, next is our citizens participation period, and we allow 30 minutes. We've got a little over 30 people that have signed up, so I'm going to ask you to please state your name and address, and please try to keep your remarks to a minute. And first on the list is
Sorry, I had to
Robert
cut you off.
King
Here's my
David
card.
Ross. King David.
Since I have it short. First, I would like to thank State Representative Wendell Gilliard and the many, many friends and concerned citizens he brought out yesterday at the press conference at the International Longshoremen Association in Charleston. Now, I, Robert King David Ross, member of the Citizen Want Excellence for the IAAM. I'm a taxpayer, approved artist of the South Carolina Arts Commission, member of the Gullah Society, local storyteller, and direct descendant of Pharaoh Ramses III of ancient Egypt, Kemet, based on my DNA analysis. And I'm also a proud 2019 member, charter member of the International African American Museum. Respectfully demand that City Council defer action and delay a request on July 16, 2019 to approve the construction contract for the IAAM. Respectfully, the IAAM board members are committing fraud, and respectfully, Dr. Joy Bivens, Chief Curator, Dr. Bernard Powles, Interim CEO, and former Mayor Raleigh are being intellectually dishonest in telling our African story. Cannibalizing cultural memory is not progress. For example, to belittle and de-emphasize one of our African ancestors' greatest accomplishment in the world is the creation of mathematics and the first mathematical tool, the Nshango bone. I recommend to the IAAM board a proposal. Time. Right. So, therefore, until questions of priority such as museum governance, museum design, museum exhibits, historical narrative, and content has been resolved, I respectfully request that City Council delay the construction contracts for the IAAM. We do not want a minimal adequate education museum.
Thank you, sir.
Next is Muhammad Idris, followed by the Reverend Charles Hayward and Mark Brandenburg.
Mayor, City Council, ladies and gentlemen, I was asked to speak on the form of using images to portray superiority, white supremacy. The most deadly form of white supremacy is to promote an image of a white man to the world as God. That is evil at its utmost. People are asking to take Calhoun statue off Marion Square. We are asking to take all images that portray divine from out of our houses of worship and out of our city, period. Any image that portrays divine is an act of evil. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Charles Hayward, honorably retired Presbyterian pastor, simply come to ask again that City Council take action to remove the John C. Calhoun statue from Marion Square. If you could appreciate the comments made on African American history in this very room over the last hour and a half, put the statue in context of what the President of the United States has been saying for the last 3 days. Our two Republican senators, as well as the silence from our federal representatives. This is a great challenge, and it will take courage for this council to act. It'll only take courage of one to make a motion. courage of another to second, courage for all of you to debate the issue, and courage of the majority of you to take the actions to move this statue. Just think about the statue and the International African American Museum coexisting. I appeal to your better sense of doing the right thing. Why doing the right thing is always the right thing to do.
Time.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Mark Brandenburg. I live at 2650 Burden Creek Road, which is out on Johns Island and is adjacent to the area which was up for annexation and where a PUD has been proposed. All of that's been pulled off of your agenda for today, so I'll be very brief. But I will tell you that the problems with that project are legion. The opponents to it are many. A number of whom are sitting beside me from our neighborhood. I know there's plenty others that are sitting in the audience. The least of the problems, I think, is probably the name of the project. It was originally called Oakville. It's now called River Run. The problem with that is there's already a river run on Johns Island, so the developers hadn't even done their homework on that. The worst of the problems, of course, is the drainage. We were here yesterday for your Dutch Dialogues experts' reports. We talked to some of them, and some of them came out and looked at the property yesterday. All of them that we talked to said this is not an area that ought to be developed at all. It's very similar to an area right behind you, where a few months ago y'all bought a bunch of houses that a previous city council approved to be developed out there, and you've demolished them. If you approve the annexation and you approve the PUD, some future city council is going to do that in years future. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and thinking you'll get a different result. Stop the insanity. Please reject the annexation. Reject this PUD.
Time.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask for y'all to refrain from future outbursts, even applause. If someone would like to ask the audience who's supportive of their comments by a show of hands, that would be most appropriate, and happy to do it that way. Thank you.
Okay, we have J. Denise Williams, Tim Squire, Eric Lundgren, Lori Adams, and Franny Henty, in that order.
Good evening. My name is J. Denise Williams Cromwell. I'm at 8157 Greenridge Road, North Charleston. I did speak with Councilwoman Jackson on the little break, so that will help me in probably getting with Councilman Warren on the concerns that I have personally, that there are no African American on the planning committee, have been or is on that committee. I would like to find out more information about being a part of that. I was born and raised here. I have a cousin, Marion Newton, right now, is completing a book of his history, our family history here. I've taken a DNA test, and my family comes from not just slaves. We were not just slaves. We were kings and queens, and we come from royalty. So I would like to be able to voice and share my opinion, our opinion as African Americans, that we are building a museum to represent us. We should be at the planning table.
Tim Squire.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Tim Squire. I live on Johns Island, and I would like to speak to you about the River Run Oakville project concerning the annexation and planned development. Even though it's deferred, it's still a pending issue, and it's very much concerned with drainage and flooding. In the past, the council seems to have not been able to see the forest for the trees in concerning these issues, or to see the swamp for the water, and that applies in this situation. Any such project like this, not just River Run or Oakville, but any such project like that where there's significant upbuild, fill and build project, creates a neighborhood that becomes a massive earthen dam. And it blocks natural drainage, and it creates flooding on surrounding properties. And I had urged members of this council to draft an ordinance to put an end to fill and build practices of development. This is something that needs to be addressed, and again, stop the insanity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. All right, let's see. Eric Lundgren. Eric's not here. Okay, Lori Adams and Franny Henty.
Franny, they just called you. Franny.
Miss Lori.
Okay, Franny.
I'm Lori. My next?
Lori, yeah, you're
Yes.
yes, Lori, you're next.
And then Franny. I'm Lori Adams. I live on Johns Island, also known as the red-headed stepchild of the state of South Carolina and the county and the city. I deplore the city to stop annexing property on Johns Island until they solve the flooding issue. The development that's going on Johns Island doesn't have a resident that's a representative of Johns Island. We have no say. We're the red-headed stepchild. It's beyond imagination. I don't think there's any place else in the United States of America that has a township, technically Johns Island should be a township, doesn't have a say in what goes on. Now, because this is the United States of America, I believe things that have been done can be undone. And I implore the residents of Johns Island and James Island, we get some good lawyers and we reverse what has happened so that the city of Charleston cannot just continually annex property. The flooding issue, I mean, there are residents that are concerned about developments because of the fill that's been put in, that they've lived there for 20 years. Well, what's going to happen when my property floods? And the reply was, do you have FEMA? I mean, that's ludicrous. So please, residents of Charleston, residents of Johns Island, James Island, anybody else that wants to see Johns Island maintain its rural integrity. It's not rural anymore, but we can stop the insanity.
Thank you.
Franny Henty.
Good evening, and thank you to the city council. Thank you for the church. And can you hear me? This is a really cool place to gather. It's like Jesus goes to Vegas or Hollywood. But it's, I mean, I'm a Christian and everything. I don't mean that's not the religious story. Anyway, thank you for approving Fort Pemberton Park site on James Island, and thank you for passing the traffic amendment. And thank you to the City of Charleston staff for recommending disapproval on something, and then at the beginning of the meeting. And with regard to annexing the property for the purpose of the planned unit development River Run, at this juncture in the City of Charleston, any action contrary to solving flooding and traffic issues is self-serving to the developer's pockets only, in the interim only. Ultimately, it harms the existing taxpayers. We are already beyond maximum density in the way that has been managed up to now. Please do not let private engineers gaslight you with algorithms which ignore the obvious to contiguous tax-paying property. While that went fast. Contiguous property owner tax-paying in the city and adjacent jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay. Steve Green, Rich Thomas, Phil Dustin, Nicole Labelli, and Thomas LaBrie.
Hi, I'm Steve Green, 2160 River Road, Johns Island. I've read the City of Charleston Century 5 Plan update. The #1 goal is to preserve the physical qualities and the way of life in rural areas of the city. I've lived on River Road for 37 years. I've seen what the city does under the Century 5 plan with the new Stono View development, as I live directly across the street from it. 6 inches of rich topsoil is stripped from the land, topsoil which grew cabbage, potatoes, and now in Johns Island tomatoes. It is sold and replaced with 4 to 5 feet of sandy soils and clay, which does not allow permeability. The development has created a dam effect between my house and the Stono River. My front yard started flooding when the development began infilling, and this goes against the #1 goal of the Century 5 plan, to preserve the physical qualities and way of life in rural areas of the city.
Time.
Please stop this annexation from moving forward until after the Dutch dialogues are complete and their policy recommendations have been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rich Thomas.
Hi, I'm Rich Thomas, Betsy Harrison Parkway, Johns Island. I do not live in the city, but things the city does on Johns Island affects me and many of our neighbors. Last night, David Wagner stood right there and he said a few things that I jotted down. One thing he said was, do something special. Second thing was solve problems. The third was have concerns about compromises that cost nature. And the fourth thing I jotted down was you can't lose things that are valuable. This proposed Oakville project will violate each one of those principles he spoke to. Everything we know about this project in Johns Island tells us that it violates every one of those principles that he spoke to last night. I urge you all in any future deliberations to put a stop to this project. Stop it now. The easiest way to solve a problem, as he mentioned, is not to create it to begin with. You have the opportunity not to create a problem here. I urge you not to do that. Thank you very much.
My name's Nicole LaValle. I live at 1968 High Meadow Street on Johns Island. And I've only lived there 20 years, but long enough to have friends who have lived there their whole lives. My mechanic, who is in his 50s, said that he has never seen the type of flooding that he saw just 2 weeks ago. Over the bridges, it's getting bad, and we keep coming and saying that. I just watched a family that by all accounts is very responsible and cares about the community, and Mr. Chase was denied a request to build, and in part because of the flooding at Hugie Street. So I'm a little curious that an out-of-towner could come in and even have a shot at doing something like that on Johns Island where it will cause a real problem for us. My heart swelled as I applauded for the museum and the hardworking young people. It bothers me that you would try to silence applause when that applause represents what so many people on Johns Island are feeling, even though all of us couldn't come here and sit for over 2 hours tonight. No more build and fill. Please stop the insanity.
Hi, City Council. I'm Phil Dustin. Quick update on Change.org petition to save River Road. 3,701 people have signed that petition in the last year. How many people here are here because of the Johns Island issue? Just stand up. Let's show people who's here. We vote. What I'd like to say about River Run is why on earth would we put homes in harm's way? Why would we build on the delta of a river that we know already floods? Is it ignorance? Is it stupidity? Is it greed? Whose idea was it? Charleston has problems already. We don't need more. So stop this now. Be responsible. and vote no against this annexation and vote no against this PUD. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm Thomas LeGree. I'm a lifelong resident of Johns Island. My family's been on that island for over 300 years. I came here tonight to speak to y'all against Oakville, but it got pulled off the agenda. So I figured, well, I'll speak on the annexation. It got pulled off the agenda. An hour before the meeting, it got pulled off the agenda. I got a text on the way over here, it was pulled off the agenda. I'm a little upset about that, and that's what I want to speak to you tonight about. I think it's a very poor procedure for the city of Charleston to allow developers to put something on the agenda, people to take time off from work, get babysitters, not being able to spend time with their families and come down here and speak about a thing in 3 hours and 4 hours before and an hour before if something gets pulled off the agenda. That is something that needs to change. You saw how many of these people stood up to speak about this just now. Many of you on City Council have spoken to us and said, get the word out. We're going to be West Ashley. It would be the perfect opportunity. And this is a great facility. We're close to Johns Island. There's plenty of parking. There's plenty of seating for everybody, unlike City Hall. You gave us the opportunity to come here and speak, but we will not get the chance to speak tonight because of the poor procedure y'all have with that. Thank you.
Randall Horace, Mary Ball, Leah Farrell, Laura McKenzie.
I appreciate the opportunity. Unlike Thomas, I don't have expectations from this council. I've been involved with the city of Charleston 21 years. I have property on James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley. I've never been so embarrassed by a council in my life. You don't listen to the public, you don't listen to the people, and you continually, over and over, do things that put us in harm's way. I've had a house that flooded. I've had a commercial building that flooded. Been in my family 50 years and never flooded. I think y'all are an embarrassment. You don't listen to the people. All you have to do in politics is listen, and you refuse. And I particularly find Mr. Moody's attitude and ignorance embarrassing and humiliating. For God's sake, vote this man out.
Oh boy.
Just my luck. Okay, my name's Mary Bull, and I live in the county part of Johns Island, but everything you do affects my life from the city of Johns Island. I sent y'all an email. I didn't know I was going to be able to get off work to be here. I hope you all read it. So I'm not going to touch on this too much other than I appreciate that you were here. It only took me 40 minutes to get here versus the 55 minutes it usually takes to get downtown. Please try to get a meeting on Johns Island if you want Johns Island people there. I'm very disappointed. You had to put a security thing up there for people to come in here. That is scary.
And embarrassing.
That is scary. And I don't know if it's because Johns Island's on the thing, but that's what people are talking. That is sad.
It is sad.
Johns Island people are not that bad. Maybe Randall. But I want to say something that Lori Adams spoke on, and I want to remind the mayor of a conversation you and I had at a meeting you were talking about, where you spoke of Johns Island as being one of the Charleston boroughs. Do you remember that? Okay. So the mayor thinks that the city of Charleston is a peninsula, and it has 5 boroughs, and Johns Island is one of those. And I asked him at that point in time if he'd be willing to give up his borough and let his borough become the town of Johns Island. No, he likes our tax money. Sorry.
It wasn't what I was going to say, but...
Humane Society of Charleston. We're pleased that this annexation and PUD has been deferred tonight, but we'd still like to raise concern not only with the project, obviously, as the residents are raising, but also with the public process. You know, this obviously was brought to our attention when a lot of the residents, obviously, the same as you, started getting really concerned over it. It's just been a couple of days. You know, this is a large-scale project with major implications. And this just does not speak to good public process. It almost feels like it's trying to preclude the public participation, and we know that's not the intent, but that is certainly how the sentiment is felt when it happens like this, just a couple days before city council and then things are changing. You know, we want the public to be engaged on this and speak to their community and help shape our city, so we have to give them the opportunity to do that. And then just really quickly to echo the concerns of the residents of Johns Island, it is concerning to even be considering another project in a flood-prone area. Really, you know, we're all having the same conversations. We need to stop filling in our wetlands and removing the natural flood infrastructure. If we're gonna grow as a city, we need to build better. Thank you.
Laura McKenzie.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come and speak. This is a great facility to do that, and I appreciate it. I happen to own property on Johns Island and lived there since I became an adult. I now live on James Island, and the problem with the filling and building, and then further down the river, you have problems. Last night, it was a great show, and I talked during the Dutch conversation, and it was, they said it, a couple of people, the woman that was there, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be an engineer to understand that when you fill in the marsh area that shouldn't be built on, and you fill it in and start building on it, you're going to create a problem every other places, just like what happened on Church Creek. I live on the divider between Church Creek and Bohicket Creek, so I'm very familiar with the water, and I own property on Burden Creek today. I appreciate y'all listening. I do get to vote for you, some of you, even though I own property in the county. You want to annex, do it responsibly. Don't allow all this building when we don't have the infrastructure in place.
Sherry Irvin, Debbie Mims, Mark Knapp, Catherine Pogue, and Dolores Payne.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Irwin. I actually live in West Ashley, but I'm here to ask you to please vote no on the annexation on Johns Island. You use our tax dollars with the FEMA buybacks because the problems caused by the city overbuilding in the first place. You cannot build on deltas. I talked to the gentleman last night with the Dutch company, and he was asked flat out by another woman, what do you suggest for Johns Island? He said, stop building. You can't continue to build. You're going to make flooding worse, not only on Johns Island, but it's going to come downstream here, and you're going to make the Church Creek Basin even worse. So it's not just going to affect the folks on Johns Island, and you're destroying the beauty of the low country. These are God's sponges that we need, and as I said, they've said you can't build on this. They've done soil samples and stuff, and we have to stop doing this. You're turning, I don't know why we're destroying Charleston and turning it into an urban area and destroying the colonial city that I moved here 15 years ago, and I'm just seeing it being erased. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Mims. I live at 2762 Summertrees Boulevard on Johns Island, which is in the city, and I own property on River Road, which is in the county. Not River Road, I own the road, and it's in the county. So I do vote, and so does my husband, and so does the rest of my family. I'm here to urge you to not approve the PUD and to not annex any additional property, since this will allow for denser development. It will also include marshland in developable property, which will put owners of the new homes at risk for storm surge. And it will also act as a dam and push floodwaters into existing neighboring properties. I can speak to the flooding of neighboring properties because you guys approved a property to be built in between off of Brownswood Road next to the Summertrees development. I live in Summertrees. The people across the street from me never had flooding when we had forest there. Now that they have filled in the land after they stripped it of trees and stripped off the topsoil, everybody who lives across the street from me's property floods every time it rains, and the flooding comes into the street. and
Time.
pushes everything into the sewer, which affects the rest of the marine life. So once again, no PUD, no annexation. I vote, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the law speed will not be here because you took so long to conduct the rest of your business.
Thank you. Mark Knapp, change of subject. I attended the audit briefing yesterday, and I'm going to tell everybody in here that that audit was a sham. I want to know why. We were told that nobody knew what was in this preliminary draft report. But then somebody knew enough to pay some of the bills yesterday just before the briefing. Now that concerns me. If nobody had seen it, how did someone find out about it? Or at least what numbers to pay. So, I'm going to sit here and suggest that we need to find an outside independent auditor that actually looks at everything correctly. I haven't read it yet, I just found out where to find it, but I am concerned. And the bought and paid for attorney from Columbia basically scares me. I'm wondering who paid him. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Catherine Pogue. I'm a resident of Johns Island. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for listening to the public input. Last night, I had the pleasure of attending the meeting with the many experts who are part of the Dutch Dialogue project. It's an amazing group of individuals with a wealth of knowledge and experience. If the city truly wants to solve the flooding issue, the council must be willing to listen to the ideas that are put forth and to act on them. The council must also understand that you can't, on the one hand, say that you're following what has been recommended, and on the other hand, approve projects like the annexation and that will only increase the flooding problems on Johns Island. Scientific research has shown that this project will add ongoing flooding to neighboring areas. I hope that you will pay attention to what you are hearing and stop the madness and stop the destruction that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sean, I don't know what this is, Bantax Car, or Stantax Car? Sean? Okay, Kip Valenta, Anna Zimmerman, excuse me? Okay, that's an interesting Valentine. Okay. This way.
Mayor and council, I present
This was provided by Charleston County. Mayor and council members, I'm Kip Valentine. I reside at 2755 Exchange Landing Road, where I have lived for at least 20 years. I have farmed for no less than 40 years on Johns Island, St. John's Parish. If you take a look at what has been presented to council, the Burden Creek was mechanically dug by Charleston County government over 50 years ago, when it was legal to dig in the marsh. Since then, Coastal Council has continuously moved the distance from the river that can be maintained. It has been moved in over a mile. All of the properties that have
recently been constructed at the end of Cane-Slash Road have to drain into the Burden Creek. We're talking about an area greater than 5 square miles. Nothing has been done to alleviate the massive amount of impermeable, this is rooftop sidewalks, driveways, okay? 43,000 square feet, 1 inch of rain, is, I don't even know how. I requested the county council and the secretary defer for the time it took me to bring them the evidence. There has been no effort to increase the drainage. We cannot maintain what we have. There has been no new drainage added. The soil at Oakvale, which is the correct name for the property in question, Oakvale, which is where Mr. Burden developed Sea Island Cotton, is a heavy clay. It is already impermeable as a vertical drainage. It is not an alluvial, sandy soil. It is a bowl. Any construction in there of more impermeable ground covering is going to grossly increase the amount of water that is being put into the Burden Creek drainage, and it has no choice but to back up and flood. I would beg the city council to be brave, and again, I'm not going to say stop the madness, but let's put the brakes on it. Let's show a drainage program in place before we decide to lay down any more pavement that may require a FEMA action. Thank you very much.
What are we doing now? You're going to hold something up.
Hello, my name is Anna Zimmerman. I'm a flooded out resident on Shortham Road, 100% responsibility of the city of Charleston. I'm here today, like many other people, that we are extremely concerned about our city being ruined. Extremely concerned. We are extremely concerned about the FEMA violations that are going on. And we will not stop until families can be made whole, and no family should ever have to go through having a house flooded out by the city of Charleston.
Whoever's fed up with this city council, come stand with us.
Yeah, exactly.
We welcome anybody and everybody that's
Okay.
here.
Works to re-elect them.
Oh my goodness, Mary. How are we supposed to do that? I have a live feed. I can't stand.
No, you're gonna feed it and I'm gonna keep filming it.
You go stand.
No, I'm gonna keep filming it.
Because some of us flood and some of us vote.
There you go. We all vote. We let us vote. If you want Donald, let us vote.
Hold on. Wait, let me
One speaker at a time. Who's next, please?
see. Who's next?
Okay.
Your turn's over.
Who's supposed to have people be in it? Get him stuff, man.
Jacob can't even look at it.
Oh.
Willis.
Oh, it's funny, isn't it?
Christina Tant, or Tart. Bonnie Gotham. Julie Hallman. Ian Cruz Jr. and Wilmot Frazier.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Willis Tant. I live at 3941 Marianne Point Road, Trans Island. I would like to humbly echo the voice of people concerned about the African American Museum and how it's being curated and who is involved in that. We have actual living, beautiful heroes and descendants here in our town, in Soul Free, all around the city of Charleston, who should be spoken to, and this museum should be laid at their feet. I also wanted to echo humbly the voice of taking down heroes that perpetuate hate and slavery. I also want to echo the voice that Johns Island has real flooding issues and creeks and the nature of water. Anytime we go against the nature of water, we're just setting ourselves up for more responsibility and more problems. I also would like to consider the fact that as the second largest landmass island on the East Coast, we have no more public access to water. And so as we, except for under the Limehouse Bridge, so as we are making these development choices, we really should think about the county park systems and places that people can still be able to access water, because I believe that should be a human right for a community to be able to access their water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Was there anyone else whose name was called?
Bonnie Wilmot.
Wilmot Frazier?
Yes. I'm Wilmot A. Frazier, and I'm here on behalf of concerned citizens who want excellence at IAAM, our International African American Museum. I'd like to echo the remarks that were made earlier by persons who spoke in favor of City Council deferring action on any contracts until these matters have been dealt with. We have received in 17 years only lip service from the executive board of the IAAM, no real attempt to communicate nor to solicit information from the citizenry, particularly the citizenry that is African American and which has the human rights-based responsibility and right to protect its own history. This is why I am here. We cannot have a museum established by the city of Charleston, which is given both land and material resources, which simply sanctifies our enslavement. We have a long history, the longest history of any people on earth, and I think that history deserves due consideration, particularly the Shango Bone exhibit, which sets up our identity with the founding of mathematics, science, and technology. If we want young people to grow up educated, we have to educate them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Julie Hallman. I live at 403 Carroll Street on James Island. And I'm here for the deferred HUD for Johns Island. I'm here to ask the city to stop approving high-density housing for our Sea Islands. I'd like to echo what Councilman Seeking said about the development on the number 1 of the agenda on Hugie Street. Climate change is here. Scientists are predicting stronger storms and more rain events than we have ever seen before. Charleston likely will experience a rain event like what happened in North Carolina last year, Houston the year before, and we rely on you to protect our property and our way of life. My property floods and I vote. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment real quick? Okay. I think that's it.
Would anyone else like to be heard? Councilmember Griffin.
I know that some of the public comments tonight were a little bit unorthodox, but what I'll say about that is that I can tell that these people, especially on Johns Island, they really, really, really care. Very much so. They're very united. I mean, it's amazing when we have that many people come out for one topic. And the reason why I asked to grab the mic real quick is because I just heard recently that the Johns Island Growth Management Committee is no longer meeting. And I'm very concerned about that because we had a meeting last year where it was on the agenda to have a moratorium on Johns Island. And we said no, but we were going to create this council. And it was the county and the city together. And now, come to find out, they haven't even met since November of last year. And I'm very concerned about that because one of the things that came up with this deferral, I said, well, maybe we can bring this to the next Johns Island Growth Management Committee meeting. And they said, oh shit, we haven't met in a year. So I'm very, very concerned about that. I did not say that, I said shoot. I do have $5 if I need to put it in there though. But all I'm saying is I think that we need to reestablish some more meetings on Johns Island because they really, really care and they're very, very worried. And we've got to find a way to have that committee meet again because I thought that committee was a great, great idea. And I just wish it would come to fruition more.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming out tonight and sharing your thoughts and concerns. And admittedly, an applicant does have the right to withdraw or defer a matter that they presented to council. They do have that legal right, but it doesn't prevent us from listening to you, and you have the opportunity to speak, and we were listening. So thank you for being with us tonight. So next is our petitions and communications. I already handled letter IA. Next we'll proceed with B, C, D, and E, which is our commission appointments. Sir, I'm going to ask you to please respect our meeting as we go on with our business, sir. IB is Commission on Women's Appointments. And do I hear a motion from council? Motion to approve.
Okay.
Councilmember Gregory.
I'll second. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Jackson seconded. Any discussion on the two appointments to the Commission on Women? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next, we have the Commission on the Arts. We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Okay, thank you.
A second. Any discussion? All in favor on that one say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next is a single person appointment to the Municipal Election Commission. I've got a motion and a second, I believe.
Councilmember Shea, who's the second?
Correct. Mitchell?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. And then the Planning Commission appointments. Do I hear a motion? Councilmember Griffin.
The last time we had the planning commission appointments come up, I asked that we look into a matter, and I'm wondering if our staff ever did. Regarding that, we deferred it because of a specific reason with one of the reappointments, and I'm wondering if our staff ever looked into that occurrence. Because I still don't think we should approve this if they have not.
Well, they have, and they found, to the best of their ability, that there was no substance to the report.
Well, it's funny that if they looked into it, why they never contacted me when I'm the one who asked for the deferral and asked them to look into it.
I can't speak to that. There you go. Yes, sir. Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a problem. I'm going to probably vote to do this, but I know the two that are up for reappointment, we have a long-standing requirement that these people attend these classes, and these two have not attended those classes. And I'm just wondering if we should delay the appointment of those two to maybe the next meeting to give them a chance to do that before we vote them in. They should have done it, they should have attended those classes before, or right after the last time they were reappointed, and they still haven't done that. So I'm a little bit concerned that they're just ignoring our rules.
I don't know if they've had the opportunity since the last time. They have not, so they still need to attend. Yes, sir.
I know they haven't attended that, at least that's what I was told, but when is the next class, and how long has it been since they attended a class?
Can you come to a mic?
Sure.
Councilor, those opportunities come up on a regular basis, but they don't happen every week. They typically are a bi-monthly event overall. So the next one, I don't know the exact date, but it would be something that would occur over the next month to month and a half. And they don't have the opportunity to do those things immediately. However, we always take the chance to inform our commission members when opportunities for continuing education take place, and we'll be sure to do that when the next available opportunity happens. It should be within the next month.
They will continue to serve since they're sitting board members, commission members.
And I agree with that. I think we can leave them all there, but I think before I'm going to vote to reappoint them, that they attend those classes. I mean, because I don't know, Mr. Jacobs, how long has it been since they attended? Aren't they supposed to do it every year?
Councilmember, they are supposed to keep their records current in terms of their accreditation, and we did submit the information to council at the last meeting. I don't have it right in front of me at the moment, but we will, as we've clearly heard from council, take every opportunity to stridently insist that all of our members meet their continuing education requirements as you all have requested.
Well, if they're not going to avoid your system, if they're not going to comply with your assistance, the only recourse we have then is to not reappoint them until they comply. I mean, is there any other recourse?
That's the easiest one, that's for sure. Yeah.
I mean, if they want to be reappointed, then they ought to at least have their credentials current.
Okay. Could I entertain a motion to appoint Matthew Yawn to the Planning Commission?
Yeah.
Let the two.
Which two, the new ones? New one.
The new ones, appoint the new ones.
There's only one new one.
Ms. Harrison has actually already been approved
Matthew
at a
Yawn.
prior meeting. Could I hear a motion to?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Matthew Young.
Second.
Matthew Yawn.
And defer the other two.
And we defer the other two until they attend school.
Well, let me speak to that.
Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember Ware.
I agree with the motion, but I think if we're going to defer the other two, I think we ought to put some stipulations on it. We defer it, and if they don't get their continuing ed by the next opportunity, then they ought to be off the commission. They've had plenty of opportunity to get their CE. Frankly, they've been slack. They're good commissioners. I've served with them. Good commissioners, but you got to get your CE. If I don't get my CE, I lose my license and designation. I cannot make a living. If you don't get your CE, you can't keep your CPA. Same thing with you, the lawyers on the board. So I think we ought to, if we're going to defer it, we defer their appointment subject to them getting the CE requirement completed at the next opportunity.
All right. Any other discussion? So the motion is to approve Mr. Yawn and to defer Mr. Gear and Ms. Johnson.
I had an amendment in my ear from my colleague. As long as they've got it scheduled by the next meeting. Well, suppose they don't do it. No, they got to get it done. They got to get it done. So if they don't get it done at the next available opportunity, then bring it back, let us know that, and we'll act accordingly.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll vote for Mr. Yawn as well.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. So next are council communications. First up is a request by Councilmember Waring that the State Attorney General provide a written opinion regarding the matter with, coincidentally, the Planning Commission. Councilmember Waring.
And I know we had this line just for this to come up after that conversation we just had. This council has voted 4 times in less than 3 years to change the override policy on the Planning Commission. Just to restate it, if the Planning Commission denies something and it comes forward to the City Council, it takes 75% of the total council and mayor. In other words, you have to get 10 out of 13 votes. Not 75% of a quorum, not 2/3 of a quorum like we have on the national level, like we have on the state level. 75%. That rule was put in place during the Jim Crow era. This council most recently in December voted 9 out of 13 to change that rule. In my opinion, that's wrong. There's not a single piece of business in the city of Charleston that we cannot do with a majority vote. To pass this budget, which is a little over $200 million annual budget, it takes 7 votes. As a matter of fact, you can do it with less than that. We have to have a quorum. And once we achieve a quorum, and we can have a quorum with as little as 7, full votes can pass the annual budget. But we cannot override a commission that we appoint, a voluntary commission. As a matter of fact, we just appointed a person tonight. If that person were to have a quorum at the Planning Commission, the 9 members of the Planning Commission, but there were 5 of them there, and 3 of them were to vote in the negative on an issue, when it comes forward to City Council, it's going to take 10 out of 13 to override that. That's a terrible governance structure. It was put in place in the 30s to benefit the influenced. Certainly wasn't put in place in the 30s to benefit the people who don't have a voice. So I am asking my colleagues on council that we write the state attorney general. Now I understand, I respect those who may not want to do this, but put together a letter asking. We've been told by our staff it's state law. I doubt that, and I'll tell you why. I have doubts in that particular part of the advice, because the state law cannot apply one way in Greenville, another way in Columbia, still yet someplace different in North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, and then come to Charleston, and we have the 75% rule. North Charleston has a simple majority override. The council has to come in North Charleston to override the planning commission. In Mount Pleasant, they have a simple majority of council to override a negative decision on their planning commission there. Same thing in Greenville, same thing in Columbia, but in Charleston, again, it takes 10 out of 13 votes. So I'd like to ask the state attorney general, where does it say in state law that an elected city council cannot change the governance procedures, or frankly, the override procedure of a voluntary appointed planning commission? And that's the question to go before the state attorney general, and certainly we sit back and wait on his ruling. So that's the reason for this, and I'd like to put that as a motion.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Lewis.
Councilmember Waring, I certainly applaud you for your effort, but you know, people of influence in this city influences our staff and some of our council members not to vote for this. But if you look at it, we are the elected officials. We are elected to serve the people of this city. Now, when 12 elected officials are overruled by 9 people that we appointed, something wrong. But if you read the Municipal Association of South Carolina handbook, it says all powers of city council lies with the members of city council. So we have the power, according to the Municipal Association handbook, to make any ordinance that we want or to change any rule. I don't understand why we're being told time after time by our attorneys that we cannot change the ordinance to make it possible for 7 votes to overrule any decision that the planning commission made. Something is wrong, definitely wrong. So I applaud you for this. I hope that we get this opinion and get it quick, and if we're going to be effective elected officials, we got to do our jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to be heard? All in favor of the question, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 2 is an additional request by Councilmember Waring regarding a referendum item to be placed on the November 2019 election ballot. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The issue is Freeboard plus 2. We had a first reading that came before council that basically said, for those in the room who don't understand Freeboard is actually level of flooding for FEMA is 13.5 feet. Currently, the city of Charleston is FEMA plus 1, which means your elevation should be 14.5 feet. And there's a proposal to go to 15.5. And having a discussion, I voted for FEMA plus 1. I did not realize at the time of that vote, and that was in 2015, that if a person were to sustain 50% or more damage to their home or non-residential property, that in addition to repairing that house or non-residential property, you're going to have to raise your house. In this case, let's just say you were at FEMA 13.6, you're going to have to raise it to 14.5. You have to raise it a foot. Now, there have been all kind of information put out on that in the press that's been all over the place. There's been an article in the editorial in March that said if we do this, we'd have a 5% discount on our insurance if we go to FEMA plus 2. Most recently in the paper last week, it said if we do this, we'd have a 25% discount on our flood insurance. Well, if you have damage to your home, 50% or more, due to any other reason than flooding, you're still going to have to comply with that rule. So if your house caught a fire, hurricane, tornado, if you had damage of 50% or more due to Formosan termites, in addition to repairing the home, you're going to have to raise that house. In this case, it would be another 2 feet above flood, FEMA flood level 13.6. That is a financial burden that the local government is putting on to its citizenry that we don't even know how much that's going to cost. And then the solution to it, some have said, is to apply to FEMA for a $30,000 grant. Now think about this. This is a municipal requirement, and we're telling our citizens, because we can't fund it, it's an unfunded mandate, go to the federal government to pay for a rule that your city government paid for. Now, if that were to happen in mass, I just don't see the federal government stepping up to do that. And in particular, if it happens as an individual, because anytime you sustain 50% more damage to your, in particular, where you live, it is a tragedy. Whether singularly in the case of a fire, or certainly with a superstorm that's subject to come through. It's an election year, and flooding is going to ride some people in office, in some cases it won't. But the fact is, I asked our floodplain manager today at our public works meeting, how do you determine the value of a house? Well, first they look at the assessed value. And if you disagree with the assessed value, then you can go, the homeowner can go, or property owner, and get their own appraisal. And keep in mind, the value of the property is subtracted from that assessed value. So hypothetically, you have a house that's assessed at $150,000, and I've got thousands of homes in the district that I represent that's assessed at certainly less than $200,000. If you back out the value of the lot, and let's say the value of the lot, to make the math easy, on a $150,000 home, let's say it's $50,000. If you sustain $51,000 in damage, in addition to repairing that home, you're going to have to raise it. And we call that FEMA plus 2. I had a couple of reporters call me about that. I also had a couple of folks from the television to come and interview me about that. And I asked the question to them, tell me something about Freeboard plus 2. Tell me about Freeboard. They didn't even know what it was. They were coming to interview me about it. So, in putting this referendum question on the ballot, I think we ought to change the ordinance to say, or change the question that goes in the ballot to say, an ordinance to raise residential and non-residential properties as a result of substantial damage of 50% or more. And we can put Freeboard plus 2 in parentheses. Too many people in the city of Charleston simply do not know what Freeboard plus 2 means. I was having a comment with Councilman Moody, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and I said, I bet some people think, just like we had Freedman Cottages, I think some people think that goes back to a period of time post-slavery, Freedman something. But it actually deals with, in most cases, the largest asset that most people have would be their home. This being on the ballot, I think, is going to create, the Dutch dialogue certainly is going to create conversations. This being on the ballot is going to create conversations. The amendment that I put on, and the council voted in the majority of the second reading, was to carve out houses that sustain 50% more damage due to anything other than flooding. Now, if you flood, you got to raise your house in addition to fixing it up. If not, you should be able to repair your house in place. And anybody who was here during Hugo, remember the devastation that a lot of houses sustained. And it wasn't from flooding, it was from roofs being torn up, trees coming through roofs, etc. Think of the people that were able to repair their homes in place, that if this rule were in place in 1989, they couldn't have moved back in because they wouldn't have the money to do it. And there's one big omission in this whole discussion that we're having. We all talk about the discount potentially on flood insurance. Nobody's talking about the increase on your homeowner's coverage. If you get a discount on your flood insurance, that's only one peril. If you have to increase the building code to repair fire, to raise your house during a fire, after a fire, or after tornado, or after damage from hurricane, or like I said, for moles and termites, if that building code requirement goes up, your homeowner's coverage is going to increase because the payout from the insurer would have to increase. There's too many moving parts to this that the public, and I think in a purposeful way, has not been told. So I do this because certainly the easy thing to do would be, let's have the third reading. But let's put this on the ballot so we can get more citizens in the city of Charleston involved with the discussion of, if I raise my home, how much is that going to cost me? We have articles in the paper that started out saying between $1,000 and $2,400 to raise a home. That's to disconnect it from the foundation, disconnect the plumbing, disconnect the electrical, disconnect the HVAC, raise that house, and when you raise the house, it's going to shift, so the drywall is going to crack. You got to repair all of that. Come back, reconnect the HVAC, reconnect the plumbing, reconnect the electrical, reconnect the foundation. I don't know, I guess get a brick mason or something to show up that 2 feet that you took it up. You increased it. This is just too important to put through in a political vote. Those who are for Fee-Broad +2, under all circumstances, certainly need to state their case. Those that want to protect people who run into substantial damage, and I say again, you are not going to run into substantial damage without it being a tragedy. They shouldn't have to, they should be able to repair their homes in place. So that's the question, not Freeboard +2. We can put Freeboard +2 in parentheses, but the first reading would be a question, do you want to do it that way, or do you favor raising the house and carving out substantial damage for any other reason excepting flooding? We are all in unison when it comes to new construction doing the Freeboard +2. The problem has been existing houses, and it's the older houses that's going to, in particular, be punitive. I asked the chamber, who got in contact with the Council of Governments, just to get the number, the value of the building permits on new construction in the city of Charleston. They did it for 2 years, for 2017 and 2018. That's since Freeboard +1. It's not quite $2.5 billion, about $2.3 billion worth of new construction. That's by permit, not appraised value. That's just by the permits that were issued in the city of Charleston over those 2 years. Now, just think about it. If either one of those properties were sustained, they're already at 14.5. If they were sustained 50% or more damage, a 2,000 square foot house that was built in 2016 is going to cost $2,000, $1,000 to $2,400 to raise 12 inches. That's just factually wrong. And to put that out to the public should be criminal. So that's, I appreciate the time that you all have allotted me on this, but I think if we were to put this on the ballot, I think citizens will be asking a lot of questions of the mayor and certainly all 12 of us, and rightly so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin and then Jackson.
Councilmember Warren, you've had a lot of good ideas over the years, but this might be your best one. How could we, as 13 people, make a decision that's going to impact people financially? 130,000, 140,000 people. You know, this would be a pretty drastic situation, and I don't think this should be in our hands. It should be in the citizens of Charleston. But the one thing I'll say that I'd like to see happen is if this did go on the ballot this November, I would like our city to have a couple of workshops or learning session so people actually know what they're voting on. Because far too often you see referendums in the ballot box, you have people that may tell you, oh, you should vote this way or that way. But if we want to make sure that people are educated, then we set up some workshops, a few weeks prior to the general election, and make sure that people have the opportunity to get the science behind it and make their own factual decision. They need to know that the financial cost or benefit that it could be, and they need to know what their elevation level is of their home when they go to the ballot box, because that might influence their decision. If they know that they're already below elevation, the requirement, and they were to have a 50% or more, they could have to raise their homes way more than 2 feet. Could be several. So I just want to make sure everybody's educated. I'm guessing that number 3 this was the reason I raised my hand is because the third item on here would make it official on the ballot. Is that what that resolution would do?
I believe that's correct. We have, for whatever reason, 2 items here. One just to discuss the matter, and then a third one to actually put the resolution on the ballot. Maybe, Matt.
Did you make a motion, Councilman Waring?
No, Sterling could address that question. Sterling?
I'll just explain the addition of the third item. When we became aware of Councilmember Waring's request for the second item, the legal department looked into it as far as the timing goes for adding a referendum question to the ballot. And that deadline is going to be August the 15th, which is prior to our August 20th meeting. And so this would be our last opportunity for a regularly scheduled meeting in order to pass that, unless we want to call a special meeting in between now and August 15th. So that was the reason for preparing that and adding it to the agenda if you all want to entertain that.
So we have a resolution prepared.
Did you make a motion?
There's not a motion on the way.
Yeah, kind of want to hear discussion.
Councilmember Jackson, while we discuss it without a motion.
Yeah, actually, I raised my hand originally because I thought incorrectly that we should have 2 resolutions. So I'd appreciate hearing the motion in a second, and then I want to think about what I want to say.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I presume the motion is to approve the resolution as has been presented, as edited by Sterling, or not?
I'm going to say no because I think, let me hold the microphone. I think to title it Free Board plus 2, again, it's confusing. I am okay with an ordinance to raise
flood elevation.
13.5 to 15.5 once a house, a residence or non-residential property sustains 50% or more of substantial damage. And in parentheses, we can put Free Board plus 2. Because if we put this on the referendum as Free Board plus 2, a lot of people still going to be confused. And I think we ought to put it on there as it was on the first reading. Are you in favor of that? And as the amendment, as suggested, carving out houses that sustain substantial damage, excepting flooding. In other words, if you have it for any other reason than flooding, you can fix your house in place. If not, then then you have to jack it up if you did it because of flooding.
So I just want to be clear exactly the language of what you're proposing for this referendum, because tonight would be the last regular meeting we could approve it, and I do think you would want the language to be exact so that it's correct if it's going on the ballot.
That's correct. The actual referendum question needs to be in the form that we would submit it to the Election Commission. So if you feel like we need to do more work on it, it might be advisable to call a special meeting to work out the details of that if we don't want to use the version that has been proposed in the packets. if it was a simple correction, that we might be able to just amend it verbally, but that actual language needs to be in the form that it's going to go to the Election Commission for review and approval.
So if I may ask you a question, you gave us this resolution and it's got these whereases, which kind of explain, the first whereas says Freeboard is an additional height above the FEMA mandated, so it kind of explains it. But would that, all of this be on the ballot, or just that one question?
Just the one question.
Question under section.
That's correct. And so the resolution just puts it into a legal form that we can then submit to the Election Commission with all of the legal language that needs to be in there as far as, approving and authorizing the commission to go ahead and put that on the ballot. And I believe that they still would review it and need to approve the final form of the question, but that would be your mandate to say that we would like for this particular question and this language to go on the ballot.
So right here on page 2, y'all, if you want to move forward, we need you to specifically change the wording and propose that to us here this evening.
Well, let's do this, the microphone. Councilman Griffith came up with a good idea. We're going to have an audit committee meeting on the 20th, next week, the 25th. That's a committee of the whole. So we're going to be there together. That'll give us some time between now and then to work out the wording on it. And we could add that on to the end of the audit committee.
That sounds good. I think, as far as the legal part of it goes, I feel like I have a good handle on the resolution, but I did work very closely with our stormwater team on the language that would need to be in there because, it's hard to make sure that all the definitions are addressed for the general public. A lot of this is very technical, so it would be good to work it out with them as well.
Great. If we can, certainly I move for approval, but if we don't mind deferring it to the meeting of the 25th, that sounds like a reasonable solution.
Yes, Councilmember, I was just suggesting we'll have a special council meeting, I guess, after the audit committee meeting. But if you all have some, or before, whatever's convenient, but if you could have your proposed language to us in advance of that meeting, so we have an opportunity to review it and circulate it with everyone, I think that might be
hopefully we can hammer that out before the week is out.
This week.
This
week.
Next week, Councilmember Jackson and then Shealy. Did you give up the microphone? You had one a minute ago. Councilmember Jackson.
So I'll just make a motion to defer this item until we have our special meeting on the 25th.
Second.
We have a motion to defer and a second. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just 2 questions. First of all, I guess, just from a procedural standpoint, do we have to announce that we're having this meeting, and we have enough time? Or we have enough time and all that? Okay. All right. The other question I guess I had was maybe Councilman Waring, would the language be too confusing if we put, instead of using freeboard, 2 feet above base flood elevation? Now, I know it's still confusing because a lot of people don't know what base flood elevation is, but it may, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of an easier way for people to understand it.
So I think any recommendations as to specific language can be sent to Sterling, and she'll try to incorporate it into the resolution.
I think anything that makes it easier for the public, I'm for.
The better. That's right. Me too. Councilmember, anyone else before I go to second shots? Councilmember Griffin and Seeking.
I just wanted to say that the language of the referendum number 2 is just a summary, right? So the actual language is what was passed out to us.
Do you support the city council?
Do you support the city council? Yeah, so that actually looks a lot better. I don't think you're going to have a lot of corrections or revisions that you're going to need done, council. I think it was just a little confusing the way it was put on the actual agenda. It looks like a summary of that, so thanks.
All right. Councilmember Seekings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should really proceed with great caution here. We've been talking about this a lot. I was prepared to vote for 3rd reading on the ordinance that we had. Councilmember Griffin said, how do you do this for 140,000 people? We do it every time we meet. We vote for them. They vote for us to vote for them. when we were, and I'd like to talk to Jacob just for a second before we get next Thursday, because one of the things that we were proceeding under the ordinance that was before us is there were certain, not just provisions in there, but there were certain areas of the city that were going to be exempted anyway. And under this ballot provision, it does not include the exemption for those portions of the city. And I can just assure you, I'm prepared to vote for my constituents right now, no, because there was a whole different consideration in districts in downtown with historic homes because of the zoning requirements and the difficulty we have with going freeboard +2 in some houses that are currently -4 or 5 against height ordinances and all that. So I really want to make sure when we get this on a ballot that we are not making this broader than what we were considering as a city council going through the 3 readings. And so please, I hope you're available next Thursday, be prepared to address that. And I would like to build into this ballot provision the exemptions that were already in what we were considering through the 3 readings that we were about to get through tonight. So did I make myself?
It's non-binding.
I understand it's non-binding, but remember how this works. I mean, once you get it out there, people vote on it, we want to make sure they know what they're voting on and what the intended and, more importantly, unintended consequences may be, because this clearly is one instance where one size does not fit all. I totally agree with Councilmember Waring's concerns about having to go back and building something bigger and taller than it was for reasons you never anticipated. But again, this has some implications that are beyond that. So, Mr. Lindsay, sorry to give you some homework between now and then, but I do think we need to match the ballot proviso with the ordinance that was going forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I will support the vote to defer. I think that's the best idea in terms of having the time and the clarity of what we're actually going to be asking the citizens to think about on a ballot. To be honest, my first reaction to this was, I guess, sort of polar opposite of yours, Councilmember Griffin. I do think that this kind of decision-making is why we are elected, why we have our districts and the constituents that we are responsible to. I personally don't understand the wisdom of having an advisory, non-binding referendum. What will we do when it's, you know, a close vote or a poor vote, or to me, it just seems to keep everything sort of up in the air and unclear. And this is such a complicated topic in the way that people would have to be thinking about it in sort of black and white terms or applying it to their own home when they get to the ballot box. What we've never really been able to talk about with any sort of common sense. I would like to have like a case study by the time we get to the 25th. I think the statistics that Mr. Jolka gave us at one of his very thorough presentations about the statistics of how many people have insurance in the city that would immediately, if they had any kind of disaster to their house, fire, wind, whatever, a car runs into their property and knocks it off the foundation, they're going to get covered by their insurance company. And their insurance company is going to require them to build their house to the base elevation plus whatever the building code says in the municipality in which it's being rebuilt. So we're really talking about 1 foot of difference. And that's what we were pricing. That was the information that was originally given to us about the additional cost for raising a house 1 foot above what they would already have to do it today. I think we've lost track of that. And my heart goes out to the people that you're most concerned about, Councilmember Waring. I totally admire your whole reasoning for wanting to do this. I think the better way of doing this is to establish a way to help people if they don't have insurance and they come across that kind of, catastrophic occurrence that requires them to rebuild their house and raise it up to meet building code. We can do that. We can have subsidies. We can help people buy insurance. It just doesn't make sense that we're trying to legalize something that is not going to happen for very many people and will punish people who are faithfully paying their insurance premiums. So, and I just in principle, I think that we're being, we are neglecting a tough decision, turning it back on people who are going to be confused at the ballot box, and we'll still be confused when we get their answer. So I'm sorry to run on about that. I would really like to have this discussion again on the 25th. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Griffin, and then we're going to hopefully call the question.
Question is to defer.
To defer.
Councilmember Seegers and Jackson, I'm glad that we can agree to disagree. That's what makes this country great. But, the way I look at it is I couldn't go to Maryville or Asheville and knock on somebody's door and say, hey, guess what? I raised your elevation to free board +2, and you need to cough over thousands of dollars. I couldn't do that. I don't feel like that's my place to do. I think the way that we're going to give people the opportunity to decide whether they're willing to take that risk is to put it on the ballot. And if you don't agree, then just don't vote for it next Thursday.
All right, motion is to defer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our council committee reports.
Mr. Mayor, if I could make one comment. I'm sitting here with this young family in front of me, and I just got to congratulate you, ma'am. These young boys have sat here since 5:30, 5 o'clock. They have been the most polite young men, and they have had to witness some of the most unpolite comments directed at public officials. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate what you've done and the way you raise your children. Thank you for being here and taking part in watching the civics lesson tonight. And they've just been perfect angels. So
thank you.
I could sit here any longer and not make a comment to you and your children, whoever your family lives here with you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's for their future, so it's the education that they need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next is our committee reports. First up, part one of the Committee on Public Works. Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Committee on Public Works met on Monday, and as you see in your agenda, items under item A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all passed unanimously, and I make a motion for this passage.
All right. Items 1 through 5, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
I'll be happy to second.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, items B through H also passed. Spring Fishburne amended to the contract, Spring Fishburne Professional Services contract, GMT Professional Services contract, item E, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. As a matter of fact, one that took a lot of effort, and I know Councilman Seekings is not going to be for this, but I hope you all will join in with me to try and get his influence to pass item F, low battery and project construction discussion. Item G, outfall maintenance, general permit work for DHEC and OCRM. And H, Spring Fishburne potential Earhart Street shaft schedule discussion. So all those things went well. I'll move approval of those.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Councilmember Griffin.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Church Creek, being that we're in Church Creek, and we did talk about that.
No,
That's
this was
part 2.
It's part 2.
Oh,
This
where
is
is
on
it?
yesterday's meeting.
Church Creek was the date.
I know, I don't, oh, I see it. Sorry about that.
We'll come back to it.
Just say yes.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So next, we've kind of already had.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just asked the council to adopt the report I gave during Ways and Means. No action needed.
Right. All right. So next is our Committee on Public Works, Part 2.
Happened today. I'm going to turn it over to our, where's Mr. Fountain. He's the star of the show at today's meeting, so I'm going to let him go through these updates.
Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor. The second portion of the Public Works Utilities meeting, we had a brief overview of the Forest Acres project, particularly talking about options for replacing the footbridge on the existing canal, we looked at a few different options and decided to move forward with considering the design-build option as probably the most cost-efficient approach for the project. We also discussed Orleans Road. This is a repair and lining of a stormwater pipe project on a pipe failure near the Citadel Mall within a public easement. This work is currently out for bid. We'll be bringing it to the next council meeting, hopefully with a recommendation to award. The third item was Lord Calvert. This is a upsizing of a failed roadside pipe system. We're currently finalizing our temporary construction easements and having the project go out for bid. Again, we're hoping to bring this next project to the next council meeting as well for a recommendation to award that construction project. We discussed the special protection area tool. This is relating back to our stormwater design manual, which is the next item. These two intermesh together. We have a ongoing discussion with the task force related to additional drainage requirements for the stormwater design standards manual, especially in areas where we have known flooding. So the stance here is to ask AECOM, the program manager, to come forth with a proposal, which they're working on now, to identify the areas between the 1984 study, the studies we've done since that time, and then knowledge on staff and citizenry of locations where we have known flooding or lack of capacity for future development. Take those areas, identify them on a map, delineate them, add them into the stormwater manual with requirements that are appropriate for areas where there really is not that capacity for new development to continue to add additional volume of water into those basins. We would then publish the maps to developers and homeowners, commercial properties would all have that information available when they're making decisions about what they're going to do with their properties. There's no surprises. They have it clearly laid out for them, as well as upgrading that section of the manual to provide those extra requirements. So we're hoping to bring that proposal as well to the next council meeting for recommendation to award. We then discussed, as Councilman Griffith was mentioning, the Church Creek projects. We had quite a bit of discussion in the previous meeting at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant. Was a $125,000 grant with $125,000 city match. That is in partnership with the Asia Conservancy and Clemson Extension. That grant is looking at what to do with the buyout properties in the Church Creek watershed to say what can we do other than have them be grass fields. I mean, grass fields is an improvement already from a flooding structure, but let's see if we can bring in either LID, BMPs, whether it's a rain garden, whether it's a naturalized wetland in a larger parcel, an urban forest, try to say what can you do that's more of an amenity as well as an improvement to stormwater in that, on those parcels. Then trying to work with our partner agencies to develop worksheets where you can see how to build a site on your own parcel if you'd like to, doing demonstration pilot projects on those parcels, and then having Clemson help us to develop a class to teach HOAs and to teach developers and to teach residents how to do it themselves on their own parcels. So that's the first section of what we've been doing on Church Creek, which we'll talk about the buyouts in a second, the demolition status on that. We also have the Hickory Farms Diversion Channel project that has been submitted to TRC for permit approvals. We are finalizing the the easement right-of-way acquisition for that parcel as well based on those permit applications. We've also identified 3 additional projects at this point that are potentially ready to move forward that we are looking at. Those include a option for additional stormwater storage in the West Ashley Traffic Circle, in addition for additional stormwater storage at the bottom of the watershed, and the Lake Dodder project, trying to protect the homes on the Lake Dodder. So the 2 storage projects, the traffic circle and the additional storage in the lower part of the basin, we have Weston Sampson preparing a scope for evaluating those 2 options to see the cost benefit on those. We'd like to bring that scope to the next council meeting, which will then let us move forward and determine if we want to move forward then on final design for one of those 2 projects, at which point we'd have to allocate funding for the project, but we can move forward with that. The Lake Dodder project, we've been meeting with the county on the Glen McConnell widening. They've agreed to do support work in terms of the piping aspect of that. So we'll also be working with the consulting engineer to develop the actual hydro study that DOT would require for the Glen McConnell work, as well as making sure we don't have a negative impact on Church Creek while we're protecting the Lake Dodder properties. So that one should also be coming forward with professional services as well. That'll be hopefully a lower cost project in that partnership with the county. We don't put those 2 projects together. So in addition to the stormwater manager reports, we have the floodplain manager reports. Those focused on that we're currently preparing a plan to meet the remaining item from the community assistance visit for DNR. We have a plan that we're proposing to them. We'll submit that plan. They'll hopefully approve the plan, then we'll basically implement that and finish out the last item left in their community assistance visit. And demolitions, we had an update that we now have 7 of these single-family homes completely demolished and reseeded. We're working on trying to get those up to a good grass field in the short run until we have our long-term plans for those projects. We also are underway on the townhome demolition. A number of these units have been at least partially demolished. We're continuing with those and then going back and demolishing one more single-family home in this first round of demolitions.
Thank you very much. We have a question over here. Councilmember Lewis? Use the microphone.
The question is not in your report. East Oak Forest, West Oak Forest, around Playground Road, White Drive, and those areas over there, I have constituents that is concerned about the weather. It's going to get bad with the hurricane season. Are we doing anything to address cleaning some of those ditches out over there?
So we do have the entire city right now on a monthly schedule where each neighborhood is set up month by month of when it will be rehabilitated back to the original design. I can check with you on what the exact month is for those neighborhoods, but we are working through to basically do a full rehabilitation back up to the original design for every front yard ditch is a one program and every rear yard second program.
Could you send me a copy of that schedule, please?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Any further comments or questions on Mr. Fountain's report? All right. Mr. Waring, is that the end of
yes,
that
sir.
report?
Yes, sir. Extend of my report.
I think that was all just for information, so I don't believe any action needed. So next we'll go to our Committee on Ways and Means. Councilmember White.
I'll move to the adoption. Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Please note that I will recuse myself on items 17 through 21.
As did I, Mayor.
And now, bills up for second reading. We have
Move to
9
take 1
items
through 9
on
together.
the agenda. We have a motion and a second to take all items 1 through 9 together. Councilmember Shea.
I have to recuse myself on item number 6.
Councilmember Shea will recuse himself on item number 6.
I think it's number 9.
There was an amended agenda that was sent out that included a different number 9. It's in baby blue.
But
As
also,
amended.
but also, 7 and 8 are deferred.
Oh, they are?
Yes. They were the applicant, if I remember. Isn't it the applicant that asked that they be deferred?
They were
The
on
applicant
deferral.
asked.
They'd asked that they be pulled off, but we discovered that they had not had public hearing. So they will come back next month with public.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my motion now.
Okay, we have a
I'd like
different
to
motion.
take 1 through 6,
Yes.
defer 7 and 8, and take number 9 as amended.
Okay. We got a second on that motion. Okay. Any discussion on 1 through 6, defer 7 and 8, and number 9 as amended for second reading? Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Now for third reading and ratification for those same items, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. So, does anybody have an announcement to make while I sign these things?
Mr. Mayor, I got a question.
We have a question.
One announcement, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Lewis.
When y'all see me again, I'll be 70 years old. Next week, Monday.
Mr. Mayor, just as a point of order, I believe we have to withdraw number 6 under first reading. Right, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that's correct. We're going to ask for a motion to do that.
All right.
Yes.
And also, Madam Clerk, do we have to make a note that number?
Y'all got to use the microphone. I'm sorry. Let's pass the microphone around, please.
Well, can I ask my question real quick while it's going?
Sure.
Under miscellaneous business, our next city council meeting, are we meeting at city council chambers or are we still on the road?
John's Island.
We are on the road.
John's Island.
John's
John's
Island.
Island.
On the road again, awesome.
John's Island.
Come on, you see what traffic's really like.
I got it. Good night,
Okay, so I'd like to be the first to,
With the lackeys posted in their field.
No, it's camera's on.
I just wanted
sure
to
we can
ask,
find
the first reading bill that is still published on our agenda, the applicant chose to defer that. Do we make a note of that?
Which one?
The first reading item number 1. In the printed agenda, it looks like it's available to be heard, but the applicant asked for it to be deferred.
Do we have to defer those?
Are we talking about those up the second reading?
First reading.
First
Okay,
reading, page 13.
But he's trying to sign those, and then we're gonna go to the first reading.
okay.
Okay.
So I thought we were already adjourning.
No, he asked us to wait until he signs.
You got your kids nearby.
Okay.
But you got your other kid here, you can go snap pictures.
7 and 8, yes, we're deferred.
Almost, what? Yeah, we're almost done. We're down to this right here and that one.
Okay.
All right, so now we're at bills for first reading. Can I entertain a motion to defer number 1?
Yes.
So moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. And then do we have a motion? Can I entertain a motion to withdraw number 5?
Second.
We're going to withdraw number 5. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it.
No, it's not number 5. It's number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Oh, my bad. Can we restate that motion, please? That the withdrawal is for item number 6 on the first reading to be withdrawn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, August 20, 2019, where we'll be announcing the location. I can't thank y'all enough for sticking with us tonight. And once again, thank Paul Rienzo, Reverend Rienzo, and his staff, and all the fine people here at Crosstown Church. We love you. Y'all are great. We now stand adjourned.
Yay, we are adjourned.
Yay, finally.